John Kabat-Zinn in Massachusetts who took Vipassana, and he called it mindfulness meditation, and he's got patents on it. You have Stephen LaBerge, who took Yoga Nidra, and he called it lucid dreaming, Stanford guy. And he's created a lucid dreaming institute, a lot of patents, and it's considered his original discovery, getting a lot of medical grants as a big breakthrough on mind science. You've got Herb Benson at Harvard, who took transcendental meditation, remove Om and put in one. He says wherever they say Om, you say one. It sounds similar. And you remove all this yucky Hindu stuff, he said, and he called it relaxation response, trademarked it, and made a huge career at Harvard. So these are all examples, and I'm writing a whole U-turn theory book on how our tradition has been digested and Christianized and de-Indianized, removed from the sources. And at the same time, there is this negativity towards us, what I call caste, cows and curry hatred. Your Professor Rajiv at the University of Chicago being one of the many centers doing this, all the bias and those kind of negative scholarship. And then the U-turn, final stage, is the most tragic. This U-turn, revised, distorted knowledge gets re-exported to India, and Indians love it. Indians love it. So this whole, I explained how the Aryan theory was the result of Indologists figuring out things, keeping what they needed, digesting it for themselves as Sanskrit and Vedas, and Aryan is ours, the Westerners, and rejecting and putting negative things on Indians. And then they re-exported it to India, and Indians believe it. And now you have very fancy gurus like Andrew Cohen, who was a disciple of some New Age type Hindu called Papaji. Papaji was a disciple of Ramana Maharshi, like that. So this Andrew Cohen becomes a big star all over India. You go around with middle class people who don't want to touch anything that sounds like Hinduism. But Andrew Cohen is not teaching the meditation. Andrew Cohen is teaching the non-dualism, but this is Christian non-dualism or Jewish non-dualism or some kind of universal non-dualism. So this is the U-turn. The U-turn, which we'll be talking about next book, we'll explain in detail with many examples of how this digestion happens through stages, very, very gradual stages. And so a lot of people are very excited that we're getting digested because they're taking a very short-term view of what is actually going on. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll take questions. Cameraman's instructions I have to repeat. Those who want to ask questions have to come up, stand here, and ask a question. So please come to the front, and I will sit there. Well, no, but I will have to come back and answer. I guess there's only one place. So people can ask me questions, then I'll come and answer.
I will come there and ask. Yes. Heard you so many times. I think this is your best, outstanding this song. I think we should give him a big hand. Talking about digestion. Now, recently in India, this conversions coming called inculturation, right? And is this another form of digestion? Now they follow now Mary Mata festival. They break coconut like Hindus. They put garland. Now they call even Devalaya, Christ to Devalaya. Everything they are imitating Hindus. And this is another form of digestion.
Yes. The way digestion works is that the predator wants to remove and minimize the differences between his views and his style and the other side to create a comfort zone. So it is that, okay, I'm not different, I'm not European, I'm not English speaking, I speak Tamil and I'm speaking Hindi, and I wear dhoti and I do these things and I have Hindi also and all of this stuff. And so to make you culturally comfortable. And this idea is that outwardly we are like you, but we have a different chip inside. Like Intel has this, what is the chip inside called? It used to be Pentium inside, but nowadays it is a better chip. Otherwise, I7. Okay, so it's biblical Nicene Creed inside that chip. But outwardly, we break the broken heart. We do all the things that make you happy. You want us to take our shoes in the church? We take our shoes. You want to serve the sacred food to Mother Mary and call it prasad? You got it. Anything that doesn't violate the Nicene Creed, we will take it. What violates the Nicene Creed has to be excreted. It can't be consumed, eaten up by us. Otherwise, it's poison Christianity. And this inculturation is very dangerous because a whole lot of our people are getting duped into it. They're getting duped into it. And our gurus who said everything is everything is same, means that, you can't even argue there's something wrong with it because they'll say it's the same. I have a relative who had some economic problems, very well educated. He used to work for Hindusim in New Jersey. Very, smart guy, highly educated. He had some economic problems and family marital problems and all kinds of things. And ours is not a very community oriented where people get together and help somebody. So he was sort of left on his own. And then these problems worsened, and then people said he's talking weird. And I was the only guy who could figure out there's some kind of religious thing going on in his head, religious shift in his head. He started, you come to the Indian marriage events where collar like a priest, Christian priest with kind of a Bible, reading it out. And then he would say it's the same as Gita, don't worry. All our people were saying, don't worry, just saying it's all the same anyway. That's our people. And one day, we were at somebody's birthday party at a restaurant, long table, a lot of people sitting. This guy was there. So I looked at him straight in the eyes and I said, so, when did you get baptized? That was my question. I just guessed that I probably have a right track. And he was 80, February 7th, something like that. All the people around were struck. They said, how do you know? They asked me. They said, I could tell. So I didn't sound like I have a problem with this guy. I didn't want to create a scene. So I kept asking him wonderful denominations. So he gave the name of the denominations and I started discussing the philosophy. And I said, do you read out the Nicene Creed? He said, yeah, we read out every day. And all that he was telling me. And then he came to my house for a private discussion because he thought maybe Rajiv got me figured out and I'll talk to him, maybe we'll be together, maybe he thought he can convert me on something. So when we were having this private discussion, I said that, your kids are complaining, your wives are complaining, you're not disconnected with their tradition, your parents haven't even told them, so they'll also be wondering, so why? So he says, since I was born, I was a kid, everyone told me it's all the same. He says, why are my parents going to complain? Every time I call, they say, sir, Greta, we believe in all the things, everybody's same, so now I tell them that we're all the same. What's your problem? This is the answer. And half the Indians in our gathering, in that group, all these Indians are Hindus, half of them said, actually, we believe in what do you want? So we got really confused. Until you can get into the cause of the problem, which is the importance of being different. What is your identity? Who are you? Why that matters? Unless you understand that, it's a losing battle. Because you can keep arguing all you want about preserving tradition and all that, but they don't get it. They think that, okay, my kids grow up and, mosque is just another path. All paths lead to the same goal. All truth is one, called by many names. We heard that this morning also. So this confusion is the cause that we can never get mobilized. Another question?
First of all, thank you very much for a very, very enlightening lecture. And the question is in two parts. The first one is, do you think the rate of digestion is higher in India or outside India in terms of the US and other regions? And the second question is, which institutions or groups you think would play the most viable role in stopping it or introducing its acceleration?
Thank you. This is a wonderful question. Honestly, the Hindus in India and the Hindus in the US are competing for who gets digested first. Really, I mean, this is very true. And it is very sad. And when I'm giving talks there, they're saying, but this must be a problem of NRIs. I tell you that. And when I give talks here, people saying, no, you talk to India, there is their problem. Point is, we got this problem universally. We do. Now, the second part is a very important question. Both are important. Second part, which institutions can help us? I am, for the last 18 to 20 years, gave up my business and all that in my mid-40s to spend all my time in this, all my resources, 7 days a week, and I don't have many resources that I need. In fact, people to help with resources, more research, media, whatever, if anybody is interested, you contact me. But my feeling is, I'm trying all the institutions I can that are willing to listen. Any temple, any burning, I go flying around every week somewhere that they want to bring me to educate people. And I'm finding that the highest leverage, see there's 3 or 4 target groups with leverage that I'm targeting. The most important group I would like to shift is our gurus. Because they already got the money, they already got lakhs of followers. I neither have the money nor the lakhs of followers. They have it, but they don't have the knowledge because they forgot the Purva Paksha. Whenever I talk to somebody who says he knows it, I ask them, have you done Purva Paksha of Western thought? I don't mean dismissal, attack on Christianity, but a very thoughtful study, like in the past the Hindu study Buddhism very carefully, Buddhist study Vedanta very carefully. Purva Paksha meant that you can explain the arguments of your opponents as well as your opponent can explain it. That is the starting point. You, in the Purva Paksha system of debate, until you can convince the opponent that you've got his point, all his arguments, all the subtleties, until he is impressed that you really got it, you're not allowed to criticize him and give a response because you don't understand, and what you don't understand you cannot criticize. That standard of Purva Paksha will require our people to study Western thought very, very carefully, very systematically. They would need a 4-year comparative religion course, which none of them have. They would have to hire a lot of people with PhDs in religious studies and Western enlightenment and post-enlightenment, which they don't even know about. I went to some of the prominent Hindu sampradayas and well-known organizations, and one of my favorite questions is, when you are training new Swamis, they have a academy to train new Swamis like Belur Math for Ramakrishna Mission and Chidambaram for Chidambaram Mission, like that everyone has. One of my favorite questions is, what is your curriculum on comparative religion? And they all say things like, truth is inside me, I should have worried about others. We're not trying to knock down anybody. Or they'll say, they're all useless, they know nothing, we have the truth, they are just all useless, so why should we study them? They don't get it. They don't get the importance of doing this study of the other. So, a huge opportunity for me is to penetrate the gurus and acharyas, those who are interested. Some of them are threatened by me because they think what I'm saying will make it look like they themselves are ignorant. So I have tried to get into the door to have a one-on-one meeting with the top guy in many, many places. If anyone can get me with Zakir Vasudev, his bodyguards around him are protecting him, not wanting to access, seriously, even though I know him. A lot of these gurus, they feel that, in their whole name they made based on a huge international clout. The point is that if you really start poking into the details, they have a kind of superficial knowledge. They really don't understand the Purva Paksha of the West. And when they argue why should we study the West and all that, I tell them that your tradition is to study the other, that is called Purva Paksha. It's just that for the last 1,000 years, since Islam came, we didn't do Purva Paksha. Since Christianity came, we didn't do Purva Paksha. With Marxism and Enlightenment and all these Western, secularism came, we did not do proper Purva Paksha, and we are paying the price. Without Purva Paksha, our tradition would have died with Buddhist thoughts long ago. The Purva Paksha is the methodology of understanding the other on our terms, being able to answer him and create a difference, understanding difference, being different, so that we don't get digested. Purva Paksha is our methodology. It's a very solid Hindu methodology, and our people need to get back into that. So if there's one thing I want to do, I want to establish a tradition, revive a tradition of Purva Paksha in our sampradayas, in our guru lineages, And Purva Paksha, not of Buddhists because they're not threatening us, Purva Paksha of Western thought, Purva Paksha of Islamic thought is what we have to do. Maoist thought, we have to do Purva Paksha on our terms and how to answer that. Yeah? So to me, those institutions of religion, of our Dharmic centers would be the most important. Then I'm trying to get into academics. I'm trying, because that's where the college people are brainwashed. And academics both in the US and in India keep having talks and put them up on YouTube and so on. Academics would be a great thing. And then, organizations like this, where at least the people are already into Dharma. Now they need to learn Purva Paksha. So, people who come here, I don't have to explain to them and argue for Dharma. They already are. I just have to explain to them, educate them about the Purva Paksha of the other civilizations, how to talk back, how to answer back, how to explain our side to them. So that's a very good one. Media would be fantastic, but I don't know how to get in. They don't want a guy like me, because I'm not Shah Rukh Khan and I'm not some cricket guy and I'm not into some political scandal and I'm not the kind of gossip, masala which they're looking for. So their attention span is a few seconds and I have nothing to say in a few seconds. I just don't. So that's my answer. Please.
Rajiv, congratulations and thanks for all the exposition. My question is, as you are telling, I don't see the Western, what is that word? Western universal. Western universalism, in my opinion, it is borrowed from Dharmic civilization. But anyway, one thing is now you can look at humanity as one race. So unless we develop our own universalism, universal values, it is difficult to coexist or live together with all the humanity under one umbrella. So what is your solution to, you figured out the solution or the universal counter to the Western universalism, only Dharmic universalism, it is the answer. When you have ideas on that? Yes.
Thank you. So I'll restate the question. He says several things. One is that Western universalism is derived from our ideas. Maybe, maybe not, doesn't matter. You could say the tiger is strong because he's eaten all the deer only. That's why he's strong. But that doesn't help the deer. If I is eating me up, it doesn't help me to say, I'm safe with him because he's tough and strong because he's eaten deer only. However he became strong is irrelevant. The fact is he's strong and he wants to eat me up. That's what matters, not how he became strong. Right? So maybe Western universalism ate up all kind of people. They ate up pagans also, and Native Americans also, they colonized blacks also. It's not that they only did it from us, they took over many others. But how they did it is irrelevant. The point is they're knocking at my door and they like to get me. That's what matters. Now, the real question you asked is, if humanity is to live as one, we need a coexistence architecture. We need an open architecture where all civilizations and cultures and diversity can coexist. The Western universalism does not have a track record of diversity surviving. For a little while, yes, but eventually, after a certain amount of time goes by, their language is gone, destroyed, their dress and lifestyle is destroyed, it all gets digested into Western universalism. You just have a look at the past. India, on the other hand, has a very long history of a universalism which respects the diversity of others, because when they come, they do not. The Syrian Christians did not stop being Syrian Christians, the Zoroastrians did not stop being Zoroastrians, the people of different languages and different kind of traditions did not stop. Now you have to ask, why is it, this is a question that all of you, I have answered in this book with homework assignment I'm giving you if you read the book to answer this question. Why is it that when there is change in Western religion, the previous one has to be destroyed for the next one to be valid? Yeah? Like when you install Windows 8, then you have to uninstall Windows 7. Yeah? You can't have both running. Whereas, we may have a rat temple from way back, and nobody has gone and said you must convert and get rid of that and upgrade to the next release. So we can have people doing Tantra, we can have people doing Advaita, we can have somebody Bhakti of one and somebody Bhakti of another. We have people of many strata, many historical times, old faiths, newer faiths, and yet they are all coexisting. Why is it that in our case, for the new release to be valid, they don't want you to uninstall the previous release? That can also live in you. Very interesting. Very interesting. Even in the same family, you may be practicing something, which is called like a new kind of a thing that is evolved in our Dharma, and your mother may be practicing something else, your grandmother will practice something else. Nobody is going to say that you make everything uniform and bring it all in line one. This is a very important question answered philosophically, why for the other side it is necessary to have this uniformity, one, no diversity of views allowed. Why can't I have an Ishta Devta of this kind, that kind in those religions? Even among themselves. Why isn't there, like we have so many united, unified temples like this one, with so many devtas? Why couldn't you put Mary and then put something about the Kaaba and then put some Jesus, Star of David? And even among the Abrahamic religions, why couldn't you have a unified house of worship? You can't. There is a philosophical reason why the validity of X, the legitimacy of X, requires falsifying Y. You have to falsify Y, otherwise you are not legitimate. This is not easy, it's not a map that they are bad guys. This is a requirement by edict. Requirement. You must understand it very detailed. So pluralism and multiculturalism within Western universalism is a facade. Within the Western secularism, you can tolerate others. Tolerance is an insult. Tolerance means you're no good, but I'll put up with you. You're going to hell, but you know what, I'll put up with you. It's an insult. If somebody says, I'll tolerate you to have dinner next to me, sit next to me, you eat dinner, I'll tolerate you. What an insult. You say, what's wrong with me? Why are you going to tolerate me? Our term is mutual respect. Mutual respect for difference is a very different concept than tolerance. When you ask a Christian, what is your policy on pluralism? What is your policy on those who are not Christians, who are doing something different? And they will say with great pride they say, oh, we have a policy of tolerance. This is it. You say, yeah, but in your office, would you like someone to say, I tolerate you next to me? In your house, suppose your spouse says, I tolerate you in the house. It's an insult. It's an insult. I have many stories I'll give you some stories very interesting. I was invited to a major university in California starting a World Religions Center, and they wanted a member of each religion to come, and they wanted to declare peace and harmony and have dialogues. This was the 1990s. So they put me on the board of advisors as a Hindu. And when they were launching this event, this place where all the dean came and vice chancellor and provost, all these guys were there. So they were all giving speeches. And they had drafted a resolution that all these religions that are represented hereby pledge to have tolerance towards each other. So when it was my turn, I proposed. I was the only guy who actually disagreed. They all agreed and they all clapped. I said that I would like to request one change, remove the word tolerance and put in the word mutual respect. I said the difference is, if I respect you, I respect you are legitimate. If I really tolerate you, I feel you are no good, you are evil, you are going to hell, but I'll put up with you. And I want mutual respect. Now this created a big stir. After this, I had to leave for personal reasons. I came back home. I got a call from this lady who was the head of this whole organization. She called me and she said, Rajiv, you really created a big commotion. I said, what did I do? He said, you asked for this mutual respect. Now they are debating whether we can do it or not. So I went and told this to Swami Saraswati. Many of you probably know him. He said, that's a good idea. We should all have mutual respect. So then, year 2000 was the United Nations declared a Millennium Summit. Some of you might remember. All the leaders of all the world religions were invited by the United Nations. Baba Jain was head of that group. And under Kofi Annan, they were going to declare world peace and all the religions will have harmony and whatnot, and this millennium will be the millennium of peace. That's what will happen. So there was a resolution which had been drafted, and in the resolution it said that we all declare tolerance for each other. So Swami then and Saraswati, since everybody had to approve, he crossed out and put mutual respect. And then the Vatican guy, when he would get it, he would cross it out and put tolerance. And this went on. And New York Times reported that there is a serious risk, there is a deadlock of language, of technical language, people are quibbling, they didn't give details. And therefore there is a real risk that the summit may collapse without a resolution, and it will be a big embarrassment for the United Nations. So this went on, and they kept putting pressure on Swamiji. Swamiji put his dug his heels and said, no, I want mutual respect. Tolerance is my burden. So at the 11th hour, the Vatican blinked and they passed the resolution with mutual respect. And everybody thought, wow, this is very good. But the story is done then and there. About a month later, after everybody's gone back to their home, the Vatican issues a clarification. Official. And the head of the Vatican delegation was Cardinal Ratzinger, who later became Pope Benedict, the current Pope. So it's not a small fry. He was a big shot even then. He was head of Vatican's external affairs. Anything to do with the outside world, interfaith and whatever. He was the head of that. Then he later became Pope and changed his name to Pope Benedict. He was called Cardinal Ratzinger. He's the one. So done through the church. Which means, going back to the Nicene Creed, the Christian good news of the Savior is the only way to save. Others can take you from kindergarten to 5th grade to 10th grade, high school. But if you really want to go to the highest level, the PhD level, the ultimate level of being saved, you have to come through us. So they have to sign, but then they have to clarify what they mean by respect and to qualify respect. Then came 9/11, 2001. And after 9/11, the Muslims in US were certainly very shaken up because a lot of attacks on them. Certainly there was this Hindu-Muslim bye-bye going on. Muslims very interested, we all want one another. Certainly. So I was invited by some people in Dallas to speak on all this religious stuff, harmony, and a radio station which was owned by a Pakistani, South Asian radio station. They interviewed me, and then they had callers calling with questions. So I explained mutual respect. I believe in mutual respect, not tolerance. So this lady calls. Later I was told she's a well-known activist, Pakistani activist, big community leader in Dallas. At the time I didn't know who she is. So she calls and says, Rajiv ji, congratulations, welcome to Dallas. On behalf of all the Muslim community, I want to thank you for your great statement about mutual respect, and I tell you, we Muslims really believe in mutual respect also. Thank you. So you see, this is where most Hindus who want to take it further. You have to push it further. So I said, I'm very glad that you respect me, and I'll explain what all my faith entails that you are respecting. And I mentioned all the things that we are married from. So I said, I'm very glad that you respect me. So let me explain that my faith, I do worship images.
Idols.
We believe in karma and reincarnation, not eternal paradise or hell after one birth. And the divine can be also worshipped as feminine.
Right. Very true.
So she hung up. See, I had to call her enough. So this is the point, that the tradition of mutual respect. I always tell when I'm arguing with theologians from Christianity and Jesuits, we tell them all the time, Hindus are afraid of this, but I have enough full function, then I can do it. So when they say, when we are talking about how open-minded they are, this and that, I always make offers which they can't accept. This is a strategy. You make an offer which is very equal. I'm doing this for you, I'm giving you $20, you give me $20. Now you can't say no to that, right? So I say these kind of offers. So I say, for example, I'll get you a Hindu community and a temple where we have a quid pro quo, reciprocal relationship with your church. We will install Jesus as an Ishta Devata, and in your church we will install our deities as divine. Will you do that? No way. Now, I can go on, but to save time, I just refer you. You go to my website, this book, www.beingdifferentbook.com. Beingdifferentbook.com. One of the tabs is called videos. When you click videos, there are two groups. One is academic events, and the other is public square, non-academic events. In the public square, one of the videos is with my 1.5-hour discussion with Mark Tully. Mark Tully is a famous BBC correspondent, Anglican church member, but loves India, loves Hinduism, lives in India, very great fan of Indian culture, Dharma, all that. It's a 1.5-hour discussion with Mark Tully, and he's such a broad-minded guy. But the purpose of the discussion is for me to show to you, the viewers, that even a guy like that can only go so far. But there's an edge. He starts off by saying, great book, Amit, but I don't like the fact that you are wanting us to be different. You should be safe. So I say, okay, let's be same on my terms. You can be same as me. He sort of doesn't quite know what I'm saying. I'm saying, if you mean I have to be same as you, then you are converting me. But you can be same as me. I have no problem. So for example, let's say our deities and Jesus both are different forms of the same aspect. That would be nice. So, if a temple is willing to install Jesus, is the church willing to install our deities? And he said, well, that will be a problem because, then we'll be accused of polytheism. I said, okay, then you can't be the same. What are you talking about? Then I go on, then he again says, yeah, but again we talk about difference, we talk about being same. So I say, okay, we have a principle of reincarnation and karma. So, you will accept that? Do you accept that? And he says, that will have some problem there. My church is not going to. So I go on explaining the difference. He can't accept our point of view. He goes on coming back to let's be same. And then I tell him let's be same on my terms. And here is another difference. And then he can't accept that difference. And we go on and on for 1.5 hours. I really would like you to please watch that. Because that is the cutting edge of how to answer, how to talk with somebody who's being so nice, very decent gentleman, thorough good guy. I love him as a friend. And it's not his fault because he's as broad-minded as his church membership allows him to be. And he can't be out of line with his church. It's a congregational group organization, not an individual organization. Membership oriented, it will be in violation of his own hour, all that stuff. So it's not the fault of the Christians, this is the group they are in. So when we are talking about multiculturalism, I'm telling you that the multiculturalism of Christianity goes only so far. It allows you to have tolerance. It allows you to be the same on their terms. It allows you to get digested ultimately. And the multiculturalism of the secularism and the Enlightenment tradition of the West is denial of the spirituality as we understand it. So those multiculturalism are qualified. Hindu Dharma, without wanting to put restrictions on your belief, says you come as long as you leave us alone. As long as you leave us alone, you can do whatever you want. As long as you leave us alone. This is proven by thousands of years of history. India has an unprecedented history of multiculturalism, pluralism, and all these kind of things. Unparalleled anywhere in the world. And Western universalism has an unparalleled world history of conquest, digestion, oppression, making others like them, and so on. And I don't think you can argue that this is all both the same.
Thank you very much for being here, sir. I'm learning a lot. My question is around what's happening your opinion and you can compare and contrast that with digestion.
Yeah. Headlines, Starbucks has arrived in India, will do real well. That's kind of what headline, Starbucks come. So we're measuring ourselves. What we celebrate is that these brands have come, we are also like Americans. This kind of thing. So I think it's a very important point. One of the digestions is aesthetics of eating, aesthetics of dress, aesthetics of music. The aesthetic realm of digestion versus difference is discussed in I believe it's chapter 4 of this book, where the title of the chapter is Order and Chaos. It's a very profound topic about order and chaos. We didn't even touch this today, but I explain how we recognize disorder, what they call disorder, what they call chaos. We don't see it that way, but decentralization, ambiguity, doubt, improvisation, how we comfortable we are, whereas the Western thought is very rule-based, very rule-based. So the idea of Western brands, Western corporatization, and what I call the same-sex economy is a huge impact that is going to have a price in terms of diluting the Dharmic civilization. The economic models we have of how an enterprise competes and how it continues from generation to generation are being taken apart. And the aesthetics we have and the choice of lifestyle, how it is changing, the role models are changing, the values are changing. This is all part of digestion. And so we may end up like Philippines became a second-class Western universalist state. Contrast Philippines and China, or Philippines and Japan. Those two, China and Japan, retain their civilizational heritage. But Philippines, due to the colonial background and the way they were colonized and transformed and Christianized, they lost their music, they lost their dress, they were very, Western. And so they, except for people in the villages who are poor, the more metro-oriented people, they are 50 years ahead or 75 years ahead of India in terms of becoming Americanized. So that didn't get them to be first class like Americans in terms of rights and privileges and status, and they lost it. They're neither here nor there. So the lure of Western universalism, being digested into Western universalism, makes you a second-class person in that universalism, because you're not on your own feet on the foundation that universalism has. They have understood themselves, their history, their way things work so much better. You are always an outsider. So I have completely different thoughts on what is going on and whether this 9% growth which they claim will materialize, which I don't think will materialize. The problems coming along is not sustainable. But even if it were materialized, it will make a few people very rich. It's not going to trickle down to such a huge economy and have to last. So we may end up in the top 50%, 50 million, 100 million, 150 million becoming like Americans. Gas guzzling, car economy, oil and gas being used up, 70% imported, is not sustainable. So the lifestyle, which is highly sustainable in India for the Indian climate, for the Indian way of life, Indian values, you import and draft another lifestyle, it is just not possible to make Indians Americans. It is not going to happen. So what you create is not problems, because you create an expectation which you can't deliver. If you create an expectation and deliver it, that's a different matter. Then we could argue whether it's good or bad, but at least it's achievable. You cannot make, India has 9 times the population density, 3 times the population, but 1/3 the land. So 9 times, 10 times roughly the population density of the United States. So with much less water, much less irrigation, much less oil, you got so much more population. You cannot have Indians have the per capita consumption of Americans. You can keep making more roads and more roads, but let's say Indian per capita, ownership of cars, automobiles, became like Americans. We'd have 10 times as many cars. We'd have to have 3 times as many cars, 5 times as many cars as the United States, but in a small area. So the whole India would be like a parking lot. Because there's so many, we have 30 lanes, 50 lanes, we still not have enough. So it is not sustainable and achievable to become like somebody else because their basis is certain natural resources, certain amount of capital, certain amount of land, certain kind of population density. We do not have that, so we cannot believe that it's a foolish thing to do. But that's a very important thing.
Before I say my question, I would like to apologize before you can answer because I came in the middle of the speech and I'm 12 and well, philosophy is a very new concept to me. And my question is, why is it bad to be digested? Because you're being digested by another religion or a civilization, etc. And that religion still, the goal of religion is to give hope. And it still is giving hope through different people. You're just being digested by another civilization. And I don't find that bad at all. Because you're still getting the end result as hope, the different effect. Like Christianity gives hope, Hinduism gives hope, etc. While philosophy it achieves the same thing as hope without having deities or certain rules in some sense. But that's my question. Why is it so bad to be digested?
Good. I love these kind of questions. Very honest and it's a very important question. A lot of people are confused about this and it's good to have this discussion and back and forth debate. You see, if many people offer hope, they're not necessarily interchangeable. A lot of doctors offer hope. One may be a quack, one may be curing you, one may be saying, I'll give you medicine A and that will cure you, and the other guy has a different medicine B and he says this will cure you. They're not interchangeable just because they offer hope. So every brand offers hope and solution, the good life. Every car brand offers you that this is the best, but it doesn't mean that you don't make a choice of which car is right for you. Every song offers you enjoyment and whatnot, but that doesn't mean you don't have a preference of one song versus another. So if you have many claims, many ideas, many religions, many faiths, just because they're all offering you hope doesn't mean that they're all the same. So they may be the same. It's like many cuisines offer you good taste, good nutrition and all that, but then you still prefer dosa over, pizza or something. You want pizza over dosa. So the point I'm making is you cannot mix up the fact that everybody offers hope with the assumption that they're all offering you the same thing. They're not. And in our tradition, the Kauravas and the Pandavas were also offering hope. They both had claims of truth. The Devas and the Asuras also offering hope, offering truth. Bin Laden offering hope. Hitler offering hope. Ravana offering hope and truth. So if you start saying that all claims of hope and all the statements that claim to be truth are the same with each other, then you're going to be very confused. Then that is called moral relativism in philosophy. That means that you are not able to differentiate between one and another and everything is just as good. It's like you would not know between a medicine that's good for you and a poison that's going to kill you because each of them, somebody is offering it to you and giving hope for you. So you have to take somebody's statement, some brand claim, with a pinch of salt as to whether you accept it or whether that's somebody's claim. Even though it's somebody's claim, that doesn't mean that you necessarily have to accept it. Yeah? And so I just explained some very important differences. The idea of karma and reincarnation is a particular metaphysical axiom and a particular assumption. And the Nicene Creed, which is a requirement in the Christian Church, refutes that and vice versa. So there is a difference. If you have one, you cannot have the other. So if you are philosophically oriented, then you are taught to argue the differentiations among these worldviews, among these perspectives. So it's why at a very superficial level, it's become a common thing for our teachers to go around saying everything is the same, all paths lead to the same, all rivers lead to the ocean, actually some lead to the Dead Sea also, all roads lead to the same, some will have to decide. It's not all roads. And so all treatment plans by all doctors don't lead to the same conclusion. One guy treats this way, one guy treats that way. different pros and cons, trade-offs in risk and reward and outcome. It is not the same. So, you cannot, we've been given the power of differentiation, discrimination as human beings. And our tradition makes a very big deal of using that wisely, cultivating it, becoming sharp. So as a 12-year-old, as you're learning, you are sharpening your knowledge on different things, how to differentiate one person from the other. So you'll also learn how to differentiate philosophical claims. You'll also learn how to differentiate religious claims. I gave only some examples, but you have to learn how to differentiate. And that's what the book Being Different is about, teaching you how to differentiate among alternative choices that you have. But thank you for the question. Yeah.
Please stand closer to the thing when he is talking so that he can save time between.
I mentioned before, there's also a sound, but I think there is some tap or something like that.
Hi. So I think this question segues nicely from the last one, but you gave us kind of a Cliff Notes version of the differences between Dharmic religions and the Judeo-Christian traditions, where the Nicene Creed and versus karma and reincarnation. And I'm wondering if you have any advice on where to begin looking more in depth to the differences.
Well, 20 years of my own journey to understand these differences resulted in a 500-page book. So the way you go in depth is read the book. And read it, give you some advice. Do not read it as something quick. Take your time. Read a certain number of pages each day. When you come across something difficult, skip that section, go to the next section. It will be fine. It's not like if you miss a few pages in your house. It's not like that. Even within a chapter, there are many summaries, many sections. So if a section is very difficult, you don't have to skip the whole chapter. You can skip that section, go to the next one. And in your first reading, if you get 25, 30, 50% of it, it's pretty good. And this is so dense, people have said this should be 4 or 5 books. So if you get that much, you're doing very well. You'll understand a lot. And a few points can change the whole thing to your whole outlook. Then go back second time. And now you find that most of it makes more sense because certain things are explained later which have been clarified what was earlier. I've tried to juxtapose in sequence many times and I give up because all these ideas are intertwined. You have to read the whole thing. So when you read the second time, you make a lot more sense. Join my e-group. If you give your email, I'll put you in my discussion group which has 3,000 members. And these are people who read the book and discussing it and raising questions. So what we're doing in Q&A here happens every day, 5 or 10 posts are given, somebody gives an example, somebody talks this, somebody talks that, and talking about this issue. In fact, we're discussing my various books. And you will help me also, you will connect with other people also. And then if you have issues still, you write to me, and I'll be more than happy to lead you, guide you from.
Hi, this is Rashmi, and I have a question about one of the facts that you made, that Americans, if they want to become like Hindus or think like Hindus, they need to have a sense of belonging. I've seen some of my friends really interested to know about India and Indian culture, but in general, when I came here, I realized that Americans are very independent and very individualistic in their way of life and way of thought, apart from being religious. And I don't see Americans here as religious Christians as Christians in India are religious. That's kind of difference that I'm observing. And I would like you to, and one more question that I have is vegetarianism there in any other Christian culture that is perfect contrast to Hinduism, like you said? Indian culture and Jewish can go together, that is both complementary. So is vegetarianism that is something that can be used as universal? Thank you.
Good question. It's a common belief I argue against in this book. It's a common belief that Westerners are more individualistic and Indians are more stuck in their caste and their jati and they're stuck in a hierarchy and they're not able to think for themselves. These are stereotypes the European Indologists built about us. I argue Many counter examples. Indian music is improvisation. There's a lot of freedom. Not of this in so many degrees for so many minutes. Indian chef produces wonderful things from intuition, improvising. Chapter 4 on order and chaos shows how Indians are very comfortable with uncertainty, and uncertainty, creativity, unpredictability, flux are at the heart of individuality, Indian individuality. Whereas Westerners are taught to be, Western religion teaches them to be more relying on dogma, order, fixation. And any dogma-oriented, order-oriented is less individualistic. So Westerners, conformity with religion, conformity with one book, conformity with one particular deity, conformity with one church, is not individualistic as far as religion goes. They may be more individualistic, they have the high lifestyle and money, and they can have hairstyles and clothes and travel around, and they are very individualistic. But those who are Christian have very little improvisation. Whereas I as a Hindu have much more flexibility in my Ishta Devata, I can do this ritual or do that ritual or whatever. I am not led by a congregation, one guy teaching, everybody has to comply and obey. And this comes from a whole history of obedience. God in Christianity, Judaism, Christianity and Islam. The primary idea is obedience. Primary idea. And the human disobedience by Adam and Eve, disobedience by others and disobedience by others is called sin. So the whole story is God's edict for obedience and man's disobedience creating sin. And then the resulting outcome of that, and the three Abrahamic religions have different versions of that single idea. God's obedience, man's disobedience, and all the problems that come out of that. So this fixation with the obedience as the ideal rather than going inward. See, if my faith says that I cannot go inward and have my observe, watch my own consciousness and get my own insight, that would be very individualistic. But if my faith says that I have to copy the history of that guy and what he said, basically obey that, I'm being less individualistic, more following a certain institution method. So while Westerners are more individualistic in business, in commerce, in freedom, in travel, these kind of things. When it comes to religion, Westerners have very little freedom to deviate from their particular denomination's demands. Indians are not denominational. You go and look at a church has a roster of members. It's a very old thing. Now in America we started having members, church has a list of members and all that. But you know, you go to Encyclopedia Britannica or you go to some website and you look at how many people are members of various denominations. They tell you Southern Baptists, so many million, Baptists, so many million, Presbyterians, Episcopalians, Lutherans, blah blah blah. Every denomination has a very formal list of who are members. And you ask a person, are you an Episcopalian? He say, yeah, I'm an Episcopalian. The other guy says, I'm Southern Baptist. The other guy says, I'm Mormon. Very clear. I don't see, if you ask a Hindu, he will not say, I am this. Very few, very orthodox people will say that. Most will say, on Monday I will Shiv Vrat, and on Navratri I do that, and on this one I go and celebrate this and that. I kind of ad hoc mix match more easily for Hindus. So more individualism in that respect. And you see in a family, where you see my family, my grandmother did something, my grandfather doing some common, and my one son going to this temple, another one doing that. A lot of freedom. And so that's because the argumentative nature and the individual nature, the idea of Swadharma. I explained this. The idea of Swadharma is the ultimate individualism, which says, like we have on the web, we have my websites, my favorites, my documents. So we have my Dharma. Okay. So just like on your desktop is individualized, it is not one uniform for everybody. You can have your desktop, you can have my favorites, my whatever. In the case of spirituality, faith, I can have my tradition, my Dharma. It's called Swadharma. Now you can't have my Christianity. You can't. There is the Christianity. For a Baptist, it is particular interpretation. He will not accept Lutheran in the same church. He will not. Lutheran has got his idea. The church defines what is the Lutheran view. Every Lutheran follows that. The Lutheran website will tell you, to be a Lutheran, you must comply with the following rules. 1, 2, 3, you sign up for that. If you don't, you can't do anything. So, this is belief-based. Belief is standardized, canonized, institutionally controlled. Institutions, a given church passes resolution on do we allow gays or not, and that becomes the institutional position. All the members follow that. There is dissent, argumentation, and then they keep putting it back for vote, and one day it gets turned over, and that becomes the new policy. Should women become priests or not? Each denomination got a policy. That's the policy. We don't have policies like that. We have guidelines, but even Manusmriti says that the highest dharma is your swadharma, your dharma. Then, so there's many kinds of dharma. There's jati dharma, which is sort of uniform by the elders of the jati. There's varna dharma, there's ashram dharma, there's your dharma for your desh, and then the ultimate dharma is swadharma, my dharma, based on my guna, my conditions, my circumstances, my state of evolution. This is why we are able to accept that some guy needs to be in obedience for very tamasic people. Too much freedom is not good. Because it's like children who need some discipline. If you tell them you can improvise the way you drive, you can do whatever, they'll get in trouble. You can't improvise. You can't, when you're learning music, junior guys taught to copy and repeat the same beat. Only a very advanced maestro goes beyond normative thinking, and uniformity and standardization is allowed to break the mold. That is the highest in our tradition. Dancer, same way, you can improvise. But when your starting point is uniformity. So a Hindu view would be that the Abrahamic religions are for beginners because there's a lot of obedience, very little improvisation, very little deviation from standardized normative approach. So I would argue that there is far more individualism in as far as religiosity is concerned, far more religion, individualism in our tradition. I also explained in this book, Dharma cannot be equated as religion for this very reason. Because religion is conformity. And that conformity is God gives this one final prophet or one son some edicts, and that has to be followed, and there's no such thing as I had an enlightenment experience, I'm following mine. Or I'm following Raman Maharshi because he was enlightened and nothing to do with what any text says, I'm following my guru. The idea that there is a living master who is enlightened is very scary to the Abrahamic religions. Because in the Abrahamic religions, you might not know this, but to be a saint, one has to be dead. You can't have living saints. In the Christian church, they have had tens of thousands of saints. They have a list of them. And in which date each one was canonized, by which pope, and what was his accomplishment, what miracles he performed that made him worth being a saint. Not one saint in the history of Christianity was made a saint while they were alive. They all had to be saints only after they're dead. Why? Because a living saint would be a threat to the institutional authority.
True.
The living saint could say, I am enlightened, I have the ultimate knowing, I have reached unity consciousness, and I'm telling you this. Whatever these church people are saying, a bunch of babus and bureaucrats, they don't know. People will go to the living saint, they will not go to the institution. So, to create institutional authority, you have to get rid of the living saint tradition. Christianity did that. Many mystics were actually persecuted and killed. And those who were canonized as saints were only after they're dead, because the dead guy is safe, he can't talk back. He can't teach anything, he can't be a threat. You see what I'm saying? And you have to be dead for 5 years, that makes sure that you're really dead. in rare examples like Mother Teresa, they can waive the 5 year and make it 3 years. But you got to make sure the guy is gone dead. A dead saint, canonized as saint, becomes property of the church. He's like a brand, he's like a mascot. I can do fundraising in his name. I can have schools and colleges. Now I can make up whatever I want about him. He's not going to argue back. He's kind of my property. So the living saint tradition versus the dead saint tradition. The living enlightenment in us as Swachchitanand, living enlightenment in us, versus one person in history only had that experience, nobody else. No Christian is allowed to say that he is Jesus and he can have the same experience as Jesus had. He cannot. No Muslim will agree that he has the potential, maybe difficult, but among all the Muslims, some people will achieve the potential of having the exact same experience as Muhammad. They cannot. It only happened once, it never happened, we won't even have the potential. But I'm allowed to say that I have the same potential in me as any Rishi ever had. I can have, because I'm Satchitanand, I'm the exact same thing that he is. I'm not any different. Whether I realize it or not is up to me. You see? So this is a huge difference between the individualism and freedom. They keep saying they are more free, but I'm pointing out reasons why we are more free. These are all ideas of freedom. We don't have the bondage to history. They are bondage to history. Bondage to dead profit. Bondage to one event, one book, one canon, one church, and we can enforce it. We don't have that. So this is a very big difference. Now the second question was what? Vegetarianism. Okay. So, lot of people in Western religions are turning vegetarian for health reasons. Health reasons. It's all about what's good for me according to medical science. It's not rights of that animal. Then there is animal rights. There are animal rights. A lot of animal rights are Hindu influence in the West. This is the idea of earth is sacred and Hindu experience, Hindu idea. And I explain very clearly in this book. The cosmos is not divine presence. That is called pantheism, and that is a pagan idea which is banned in Christianity. In Islam, if you say the earth is sacred, even ask a informed Muslim, is the Kaaba sacred? They say no, it's a holy place, but it's not sacred. Sacred means divine presence, like in our murtis, there's divine presence. You do Pran Pratishtha, there's divine presence. So for us, there is divinity present in so many places. And that is considered idol worship and is banned in those traditions. Because divinity is only external to the cosmos, not present in the cosmos. God created the cosmos like somebody makes a clock or a machine or a computer and turns it on and it works. But God's immanence and presence is not the same way as we see it. So when we see the idea of killing an animal and eating as a karma, it is not the same logic for them to be vegetarian. Their logic is different. They may also decide not to eat. They may be a better vegetarian, more rigorous than we are. Many of them are more rigorous than we are. But philosophically and metaphysically, they are not doing it for the same reason. And when they say we will protect the environment, in fact, Westerners have become cleaner in the environment now in the last 30, 40 years than Indians. They're very good at it. But it is not that the environment is sacred, has its own rights. It's because we humans, if we have a dirty environment, it will be bad for our health. The fish industry will die, it will be bad for our economy. The air will get polluted and we'll have to do more cleanup. So, environment is our property. God made the world as man's property to exploit. Animals included. Bible is very clear. God made animals and world for man's pleasure. In the early time, even women were made for that. But later days are reformed. Yeah. But the idea that all of this is sacred is very Hindu idea. We ask Mother Earth's forgiveness when the child is going to begin to start walking, because I'm going to walk on the Mother Earth. When we harvest, we chant mantras, we do it in a certain way at a certain time, because we want to do it very ethically, not over harvest, because we may be hurting the plant. We are required to do that. And you see, there is no such thing as this is all a product for man's consumption, and we basically can use it and exploit it because God made it for us. But this is true in the case of the Abrahamic religions. Meat eating is sanctified as something God has given to you. So that is, and you should also understand, people are translating yajna as sacrifice. Don't translate it as yajna as sacrifice. Sacrifice is human sacrifice that then got turned into other ideas of sacrifice. Human sacrifice existed in some of these Middle Eastern societies. And then God decides that He will be the final human sacrifice, Jesus. Jesus is considered in Christianity as human sacrifice to therefore end future need for human sacrifice. This is true. And the whole, I have a friend in Princeton who's a big Western nerd. She's a Catholic and she's a scholar of Catholicism and become very famous and popular now for writing very provocative interpretation. And she gives a lot of interpretation of the importance of human sacrifice and then replacing it with symbolic alternatives. So now it is symbolically like when you are eating the body of Christ and drinking his blood, these kind of rituals. So you are symbolically enacting that sacrifice to participate in that sacrifice because you don't want to do it, really do it, so you participate in it symbolically. How the whole system based on, number one, obedience, edicts of God, number two, man's disobedience turning into sin, and then the remedy is sacrifice. So when we are doing yagna, it has nothing to do with that. Yagna is a non-transcendental. So for us, going back to your question, vegetarianism is a different rationale. Sometimes you have different rationales leading to the same end result in terms of what you do, but your thought process is quite different in that case. No Westerner would say that, this, like I had a dog who died 2 years ago, and I had a lot of experiences about this being a child from a previous life in our family. And so many times, everybody in the family felt that there's something very amazing about this dog's presence. Now, Christian, Jewish, Islamic people can't relate to that, can't understand what this guy is saying. They would not think of an animal that we've ever had an animal life in our past. They would not think that way. They would not. But when Buddha got enlightenment, and a lot of Hindu enlightened beings felt the same way. Buddha says, I recall, I have been a butterfly, I've been an insect, I've been an elephant, I've been this, I've been a snake, I've been a rat, I've been this. I recall all that. And I've been in this race, and I've been in that race, I've been born in this tribe, in that place. He had a sudden, instant flash of past, thousands of lives, all happening now. He experienced that. So our tradition is that you are bringing and your prarabdha in your deep, deep unconscious, you're bringing your collective experience of so many lives that are shaping who you are. So our relationship with animals and plants and sacred nature is very, very different than these other traditions, even though they may be vegetarian.
I'm sure you can spend the whole night here. I'm just going to have 3 more people who are waiting ask their questions and we'll wrap it up. And maybe you can talk.
While listening to a very informative lecture, I would like to ask some devil's advocate questions. Number one, non-Hindu complain about assimilation of Hindu octopus by Hindu octopus. Number two, they say, while you're talking, the philosophy is good, but your social system is so indiscriminate and inhuman. Number three, if it is a sacrifice, what is the sacrifice bali in the yajna? And they claim that Hindu, before the Shankaracharya, Hindu used to eat meat, it's compulsory after the Shraddha. Can the Hindu reject karma and Punarjanma theory and image worship and being Hindu?
Okay, so I have to first remember which one is which question. What was the first one?
The first one,
Octopus. So Hindus also assimilate. There is in chapter 4, I've described Hindu acculturation contrasted with Western digestion. I explained that. I explained the Hindu acculturation contrasting with Western digestion. The difference is illustrated when Hindus, a lot of Hindus and Buddhist thought are exported to China, Japan, Southeast Asia. There was no invading army imposing it. Those guys brought it in. They sent their students, like we sent students to Harvard, to bring back knowledge. It was not imposed on them. There was never an attempt when India was very strong and powerful compared to these other Asian countries. There was never an attempt to install a governor and collect taxes from them, like the Westerners did. So the circumstances under which the knowledge was exported, the culture was exported, was not power-oriented. Historically, the West did that power-oriented. Expansion of Christianity, Islam, or with the sword. The Hindu did not try to change the history of the Chinese, even when the whole Chinese became Buddhists and they looked at India as a mother civilization, or Japan, or Mongolia, or any of them. The Hindu did not impose their language, replace Mandarin, to give them a new sense of history, in strong vice versa. So it is very different than the spread of Western universalism and the spread of Islamic universalism, where it was control-oriented. Change the language, change the history, make them point to Makkah, that kind of thing. We never said point to Banaras and all those things, never did that. So the Hindu octopus which assimilates has had a different characteristic. It is more like I'll assimilate you, but once you've been assimilated, you will retain your identity as part of me. It's kind of like that. So, in fact, I would say there is an opposite criticism. Opposite criticism is we assimilate the guy and we let him be his own jati. Rather than saying, now you no longer have to have the jati. It works both ways. If you assimilate the Western way and you eliminate his distinctiveness, in a sense you've destroyed that distinctiveness, but in a sense you've also destroyed the basis for prejudice. You see. So whereas in our case we've said, you can join, you cannot join, you can retain your identity, you can call it a new identity, but we're not imposing a one uniform thing on you. So this is my response to the first issue. Second issue is a big difference between the ideal and the lived reality of society. This is very true. This is true of all cultures. You might not, well, we know about the history of Christian slavery and all the way, we know the history of what happened to the Native Americans. The Pope sanctified killing them, genociding them because they were not considered proper human beings, even the Native Americans. So we know that this difference between ideal and lived reality is there in every culture. And the importance of prosperity and material mobility in this, because those who are prosperous can afford more mobility and better lifestyle for everybody. And when you have a small pie being fought for by a lot of people, then you have more exploitation opportunity. And you might think that even in Islam has no racism and prejudice and caste system, or what Islam does. Islam has the ashraf. You should search A-S-H-R-A-F, ashraf, and ajlaf. The ashraf are said to be those Muslims in the Indian subcontinent who came from Arab, Persian, or Turkish origins. And the ajlaf are those Indians who got converted to Islam. That's a racist, caste oriented. And the ashraf, which is the upper caste, are further divided into 4 categories. The highest ashraf are Saids, who are only those people can be Saids who are direct descendants of the Prophet. Direct descendants of the Prophet. I once had a debate with the Prophet, and he knew Aurora after. He said that's ashraf. He quickly said we don't want to talk about all these things, change the subject, because usually they don't expect anyone to know these things. So the highest caste of ashraf are Saids. Second highest are Sheikh. Sheikh is any Arab, not necessarily descendant from Prophet, but Arab. Then is Turkish, and then is Pashtun, the Iranians. These are the 4 top castes of Muslims in the Indian subcontinent, and the ashraf are the Indians. If you want to read more about it, there's a guy called Ahmad, I forgot his first name, who wrote the Islamic caste system, the JNU professor, the Muslim life, because he was exposing all this. And he was even giving statistics that 70, 80, 90% of all the reservations for top jobs, governor and all these prestigious jobs for Muslims, have been given to the ashraf Muslims. And the lower caste Muslims are not being given their fair share, even though they are 80, 90% of the population. They have 10, 20% of the reservations. And all these are Shabana Azmi and her husband, all these guys, big fighting human rights, they're all ashraf. Okay. So, this is the ashrafization of Islam in India. That is a topic which is taboo. You will not get a job if you write a PhD on this, or you go to some conference and submit a paper, they'll throw you out, they don't want to hear these things. But this is true. So I'm not defending, we can't defend ourselves by saying everybody has got the same problem. You know, if I have a disease, it doesn't mean that you have it to help me. You know. We have to solve our problem. But we have to realize that human culture, human civilization is far from perfect in its ancient sense. We have to progress, advance, clean up our act. Others have to do their own cleaning up. Certainly in the Kali Yuga that we've had a society where everybody is enlightened and everybody is sattvic. I mean, the whole idea is that there's tamasic people, there's rajasic people, and they all have to be helped, moved up. So human culture and human society also reflects the different grades and different qualities of individual guna that exist. And we have our share of problems because of that, as do others. So that is the second, this one. What was the next one?
All the bunch, you say sacrifice.
Yeah. Okay. We've had, the thing about Hinduism is, you will find something or other in a text or in a practice of every kind it is. In every practice that anybody has done in the world, you will find something or other in Hinduism also. And this is because Hinduism, like an encyclopedia, keeps adding new knowledge without expunging, eradicating, eliminating old knowledge. There's a difference between knowledge accumulating into encyclopedia. The first Encyclopedia Britannica in the 1700s, I told, was 3 volumes, and then it kept knowledge. So you add more knowledge. So this is the Hindu approach. Open architecture, like you keep adding apps on Apple, you keep adding more and more apps. There's no requirement that you have to get the 10 perfect apps and eliminate all of them, the rest of them. Whereas the Western system is purgative, it is purging also. So in our system, we have no central authority that is required to purge. We believe that human consciousness at all levels, from very useless, bad, type, or very advanced human consciousness, because the divine has manifested and is evolving. So you will find people at all these levels. And you will find mention of all these practices, and you will probably find some weird guy somewhere doing it also. You will go to Nepal and they're doing some sacrifice, like goat sacrifice, whatever it is. So Hinduism has many beliefs, many ideas, sanctified or not sanctified, some are practiced but not very interpreted. That is very true. The situation is very different in a centrally controlled, canonized, standardized, one book, one history approach. You see, if I'm having problems in my family because I've made rules and regulations and bylaws which say this is how we will do things, I have made it official policy that that's how things are going to be, then that kind of problem as a result of that is of a certain kind. In your family, you haven't made any such thing. You give people a lot of freedom. A lot of people are doing some things, different things. And some of them are doing bad things also. You too have the problem, but I cannot say it's the same kind as mine. This is a very different problem. So that is my view on that. And the final question?
Yeah. Can a person be a Hindu while rejecting karma?
Okay. This is a very interesting question. The Hinduism is basically a self-realization rather than God-realization. Therefore, when I start a discussion with people, they say, prove God. I say, I'm not even here to prove God. My starting point is not, is there a God, and why, which God, and who created, could he exist, and whatnot. That is the way the Abrahamic traditions start the discussion on religion. They started on God. Chapter 1 is always on God. And I start with, who am I? And so I ask the person in the audience, do you have doubt that you exist? And nobody wants to doubt that he exists. So at least I got one thing going, that some kind of I exists. The question is, who is this I? The only question is, who is this I? But there is no doubt that there is some kind of I. So at least I have common ground with the audience when I start with self-realization, inquiry, rather than God-realization, inquiry. It's very different. So when we talk about self-realization, then the discoveries made by rishis who attempted different techniques of meditation. Some did neti, they argued and reasoned, this, not that. Some did, vipassana, some did tantra, some did whatever. The various systems of meditation were experimented. The way scientists in the laboratory experiment different things, and then what they discover, they share with other scientists, and he tries it also, and if he validates it, he also likes it, and then it keeps getting transmitted to the next generation. And whatever doesn't work, people go reject it or abandon it and try something else. So this way, experiential experimental self-discovery is the quintessential Hinduism. What you discover is valid as your truth. If you discover a way of higher consciousness, whether it is taught by somebody to you or you just discover it yourself, and that gives you anand, and you get that feeling of Satchitanand, then whether you believed in X or not believed in X makes no difference. So you do not have to believe in anything. If you can practice a path of self-enlightenment, for which there is large road, which actually says that all texts, all beliefs, all ideas, all philosophies are provisional and only are put up to a point. You can believe them, you can use them like a raft to cross the river, then you abandon it and won't go beyond, and you don't carry that raft or direct after you cross the river. So you have to abandon all these ideas, all the concepts, these ideas that we're talking about are provisional, they get you past the stage. If you don't need that, you don't have to have it. So our faith even gives you that much individual freedom, that there is no belief that you must hang on to. Your idea of this world is to achieve a state of higher being, higher consciousness, however it works for you. Now these ideas work for a lot of people. It guides them the right way. It avoids them certain problems. It gives them a certain sense of coherence about the world. It gives them a sense of explanation and logic to the world, and it works for them. But many rishis did not have any such starting assumption or axiom, and they did just fine. So Hinduism does not box you into even these articles.
What makes one to be a philanthropist or as a occupation? Is it religion? I'm Prabhu Garvas. My question is, what makes one to be philanthropic inclination? Is it faith, religion, Dharma, or something else?
Well, you have to ask each philanthropist. So you have to ask Bill Gates why he's a philanthropist, or you ask whoever you want to ask. I can only talk about myself. I don't see myself as a philanthropist. I see myself as doing my Dharma, which is to serve my tradition, which is a tree that gave fruit, and I want to return. So I am not helping you or helping anybody, but my own self. And I don't want to be seen as somebody who's sort of a nice guy that will help others. Actually, I'm helping myself. By doing this, by doing whatever I do, I get satisfaction. I hope to become a better person. I hope to become a better informed person. I hope to do some good to the bigger cause of my Dharma, which I feel is a great asset that humanity has, great potential for all human beings, not just people of our particular tradition. So I am doing good for the, if I am trying to do good to preserve and propagate and interpret and explain my Dharma, that is my calling, and I do it for myself. And if it benefits others, that's fantastic, but it certainly benefits me, because I become hopefully a better person, better knowledgeable person, greater clarity. And so, in a sense, whether this produces any outcome for others, whether it changes anybody else or not, I still feel that I've succeeded if I got clarity. And people ask me these very stereotyped questions. The publisher wants to know who is your target reader, and then they lock you into a table of contents. Then you have to say, okay, so many pages for this chapter, so many that, and you're producing that. I can't do that. For me, I get up early morning and I have an inspired writing output. I have an inspired, I don't know from where it comes, but it's inspired. I can produce from 10 pages to 30 pages in one day, uninterrupted, just bang, bang, bang out. It comes from somewhere. Now, this output, inspired, intuitive kind of output, is to be honest, and I only answer this to certain audiences because they understand it. I don't answer this to publisher because they won't understand it. But the honest answer is that the audience I'm writing for is myself. It's very strange. I'm really searching the answer for my own benefit. You know, it's like some musicians say that I really compose music to feel good for myself, and then I can play for others also if they want to hear. But I'm singing a song which means a lot to me. It's my own song, and then I play it. So in the same sense, mine is a discovery for truth that will help me as a person. And I'm very keen to understand things and have a lot more things to discover. So I'm actually on a journey of self-discovery and my own soul dharma. And others may see it as philanthropy. Others may see that, he's trying to help others and maybe good at it or maybe no good at it. It really, at the end of the day, doesn't matter. And because I get a lot of satisfaction, I'd rather be doing this than anything else. It's the latest gift I got when I met my guru, and that changed my life. And then I realized the futility of all the running around and all the useless things I was doing previously, which is also part of the journey, which I'm happy I did those things and I'm out of it. I've transcended that. And so this is my answer, and you have to ask every person why they are doing what they're doing.
True statement.
Just for that answer, namaste. Questions that I have. And the second is, you kind of touched this, but I'd like you to go a little bit in depth. What we're talking here is a clash of two different charities, the Dharmic way and the other one. What has the role of science been in this clash?
Okay, two excellent questions. Thanks for that. So, I don't know if there is a showcase, like in Disney World where you get a tour and say, these are Dharmic people. Next place there. I don't know if there is a place like that, but I'm just joking, but I know the intent of your question. You want to go to a community where you can immerse yourself and maybe live that life. You see, I have done a lot of that. I have been initiated by all kinds of gurus, and I have practiced all kinds of meditation and all kinds of sadhanas. I'm doing many ashrams. I've been just doing a lot of that as part of my journey. I travel around, and so I like to, when I'm understanding something, I like to try it. Then I have an insider's view, not just a book knowledge view. So I feel that what will click is different for different temperaments. And this is very beautiful in our tradition. You may find somebody clicks to the bhakti temperament because that is their predisposition, and somebody else wants to go into high states of meditation. And somebody through karma and service to others sees the divine in the others that he's serving, and that's the way. And so this way you will find different paths, or some are very philosophical, it will be art. So you will find different communities offering different combinations of these different paths, different markers. So there may not be one that everybody will like, because what one may like, another may not like at all. What worked for me is a lot of experimentation. And my temperament is questioning. I can challenge. If they would like to answer my question, I just cannot be doing this blind stuff. So I'm trained as a scientist. I'm trained to question, quiz, be inquisitive. And so that is what worked for me, is to find people who could answer, give me a lot of satisfaction, and with the answers, I tried those answers in my life, and they worked for me, so I was very happy with that. That's my kind of answer. And each person has to go looking for themselves, I would say. The second question is also very interesting. What is the role of science? Because science is sort of neutral, culturally neutral. If you discover something through a telescope and somebody in Japan looks at the same part of the sky, and somebody from China and somebody from South Africa, they will say they found the same thing. And if you have a certain laboratory experiment and others can replicate the experiment, they get the same result. So you do have a certain external truth, because it is external, objectifying truth and not internal subjective truth. You can have a universal claim which is not civilization event. Science is a very wonderful thing. Now, science, because its scope is limited to what is empirically measurable, science does not have a position, cannot honestly take a position on things which are not empirically measurable. So it cannot validate or falsify whether, Muhammad got that dream, because you cannot put it in the laboratory today and mention and measure it. You cannot validate or falsify whether, those who died went to heaven, because we don't have a telescope that looks at heaven. We don't. So a realm which is beyond observability of science cannot be within the scope of science. That doesn't mean it's false, it doesn't mean it's unscientific or anti-scientific, it just means it is outside the scope or domain of science. Now, something very interesting in our tradition, which the Abrahamic traditions don't have, in the book explains, there is this Adhyatma Vidya, inner experience, which is empirical but personal. It is called first person empiricism, means my experience of a certain technique which gave me a certain experience. Yeah? And I can teach it to you, and you have to find for yourself whether you got that experience or not. This is called first person empiricism. Nobody can observe it through a telescope or microscope and like you are observing something external to yourself. The telescope and microscope and laboratory is within. And the instrument of knowing is a very clean mind which is still, which is not disturbed mind, which is not jumping around. And that is what meditation tries to do, is give you stillness, clarity of a sattvic mind, clarity mind. So when you are in a stillness, clarity mind, and very hyper alert consciousness, you experience things which are not normally experienced, because the cluttered mind and agitated mind is covering it up. The veil is there. So when you are into that stillness, that veil is not there, and you realize that you already have that inside you. It's not something external you're watching. So this methodology, which is the height of our tradition, is, I call it first person empiricism. It is empiricism because I can replicate it, I can teach somebody else and he can validate it or falsify it. And it is observable in the present moment, and it is not something that you have to experience when you die. It's all of this. Now this first person empiricism is scientific. It's a new kind of science. It's first person empirical science. Because it is verifiable, it is reproducible. Science has to be verifiable by somebody and reproducible. Whereas the Abrahamic believes that historical claim, history can't be reproducible. But this is not historical claim, this happens to everybody. So if you do a certain thing, you get a certain siddhi, you get a certain clarity. It may take you a very long time. It may require huge sacrifice. It may take many births because your person may be messed up to start with. But enough people have validated it to give this lineage, to give lineages long-term sustainability. Because ultimately, if the methodology doesn't work, people abandon it. Because the demands being made are lifelong, huge amount of demands to go into this and give up so many things. People aren't going to do that if it didn't work. So the validation of science, closest we can get, is in our tradition, which is first person empiricism, replicated by others who are taught, and if it didn't work, they would wander off. If it does work, they propagate it to the next person. So even though a very small percent of the Hindu population have been at that stage where they're practicing it successfully and able to get this, even that small percentage is enough to create credibility for the other population, that they want to at least practice it, try it, and believe in it. Whereas the option is closed, the option of verifiability is closed in a tradition where certain things happen in history that are not reproducible, nobody else can happen because of the nature of man. Because of the nature of man not being Satchitanand and not being the same as that other person. Therefore, that experience is impossible and beyond reach. So we have that edge in scientific terms, but it is not the same kind of scientific validation as third person empirical science, which is external.
Thank you very much, Rajiv. You've given such crystal clear explanations for all the doubts and questions and musings of all of us. Thank you very much. At this time, I would invite Dr. Garland to please come up.